Welcome to Visionaries Global Media, your number one source for podcasting entertainment. Visionaries Global Media, envisioning excellence on a global scale.
This is Band From Ringside.
Tonight on the Band From Ringside podcast, we review Fyter Fest Night 1. New Japan Cup cuts it down to their Elite 8. We're going to do our NXT TakeOver DoOver from NXT London back in 2015. That and a whole bunch more tonight on the Band From Ringside podcast. Ditch that 9 to 5. It's time to feel alive. Hello, Mark. So welcome to the Band From Ringside podcast. As always, I'm your host, Bill Vagey, a.k.a. Butternut Squash. And out there in Edwardsville, Illinois, we have Two Beer. Zach Pullman. How's it going, Two Beer?
Pretty good, just drinking some White Claws. Thoughts and prayers to Velveteen Dream. I heard he was in a car accident. He was hospitalized. I'm pretty sure there was a middle school car wash fundraiser on the street. He was driving and he got so excited he crashed his car. So, thoughts and prayers to that guy.
Well, did he actually get in a car accident?
He did. He got in a car accident and he was hospitalized. But they haven't released any details, so I just filled in my own details.
He's kind of been off of TV for a while, so yeah, I guess we'll stay tuned. Thoughts and prayers to Velveteen Dream and all of his victims. We are sans Jason Bell tonight. JCB got called into work at kind of a late hour. He has sent in his Fyter Fest predictions. I know that's what you guys were pining for, not his lovable personality. But he'll be back next week. Hope he makes a bunch of monies. Don't forget to support your local restaurants. I'm coming at you from sunny South City. I want to say that there is no worse hour of work in the world than the hour before a 3-day weekend when everybody else still keeps coming at you and asking questions and you're like, why the fuck are you people still calling me? Don't you guys know that you have a 3-day weekend? But I made it through, not without yelling a few curse words. My wife was yelling at me from upstairs because I was cursing downstairs. She's like, you're almost off work. I don't give a fuck. I get pissed off. It sucks. But
so is your bar still closed?
So I bartended last week for the first time, and I mean, I had a mask on. It was dead. So that's the only time I've worked since March. I don't know how much longer they're going to be open now because, like we were warned, if we don't take it seriously the first time, it's just going to last longer. And guess what, guys? It looks like it's going to last a lot longer because it's in bad shape. We're in bad shape. So
yeah, because we're reopening this weekend, but we're just letting 75 people. It's outside, and only 75 people are allowed in the entire parking lot, every 2 hours, and we're mask required and all this stuff. But it just so happens it's on you mentioned 3-day weekend, and I'm actually going back to work this weekend. It's the worst.
Nice.
I've been working 2 days a week for 3 months, and as an introvert, I love it. And this is my worst nightmare. So,
well, I hope you make a bunch of money because I don't think it's going to last for very long. I mean, maybe it will, but it doesn't look like it's going to. But you know what? I'm not an epidemiologist. And I don't even think I said that word right. You guys know F&B Eatery. It is on the south side of it's on the south end of Hampton. I can't do the spiel like Jason Bell can, but go back and listen to our old podcast or listen to next week's podcast. They're F&B Eatery in South St. Louis. They do have fantastic smash burgers. I can attest to that. They also have fantastic breakfast food. I can attest to that. They are a friend of the show. They're a sponsor of the show. So check out F&B Eatery on Southampton. Let's get to that. 3 count.
1, 2, 3.
All right, the 1 count is Fyter Fest. AEW had night 1 of Fyter Fest. Instead of having it as a pay-per-view, they are splitting it up over 2 nights of television. This last night, Wednesday, July 1st, and next week, July 8th. And last night was a fun show. Last night was a very wrestling-heavy show, and it was, I mean, as you might expect, it's probably the best episode of AEW that they've ever had. I mean, it fucking ruled. It got off to a great start. I know that I haven't been too high on, I wasn't too high on the MJF Jungle Jack Perry match from the last pay-per-view, but they have made improvements in my eyes, or maybe I was wrong about the last one, because this tag team match between MJF and Wardlow versus Jurassic Express, in which Jurassic Express went on, was quite the curtain jerker. In fact, it could have gone longer as far as I'm concerned, but I had a great time watching it. Zach, well, let's just ask, what was your overall view of the night? Did you enjoy yourself?
Yeah, man. It's funny because you posted on Friends of BFR on Facebook that this match was really good, and I was like, oh yeah, it's Wednesday. It just reminded me, like, oh yeah, I need to get my shit together because I've been playing Red Dead Redemption 2 like a lot. So I stopped doing that and I hopped on and started watching. And this AEW show was really good. It was really good, and I think this match in particular was the match of the night on a night where I watched 4 hours of wrestling heavy shows, and this was like my favorite one. It was just very, very good.
Yeah, me too. I was pretty much down with everything. I was also I liked the way that Hager and Cody's. I liked the way the match ended because it ended with Cody getting the win, but Hager being protected all at the same time, and Hager healing it up afterwards, hitting the ref. I liked Taz's promo on Dean Ambrose, and he slid in a couple jabs at WWE in there. The best friends...
Deserved jabs.
Yes, deserved jabs. He said, because we don't run a sloppy shop, because Dean Ambrose, they've moved the match of Dean Ambrose versus Brian Cage back to the week after July 8th, so July 15th. They're calling it Fight for the Fallen, and that's when we're going to have the Dean Ambrose-Brian Cage match for the AEW heavyweight belt.
Do you keep calling him Dean Ambrose on purpose, or are you just like doing it?
Oh, no. I did not do that on purpose. I really...
You guys said it like 6 times.
Did I really? No, I did not. Yeah. I even have written down here Moxley. Like, I have my notes. I even said Moxley. I was surprised that Private Party went over Santana and Ortiz, because that means Private Party is going to be facing Kenny Omega versus Kenny Omega and Hangman Page next week for the belts. I wish that Best Friends versus Omega Page match would have been a little bit longer. What do you think, Zach?
Yeah, I liked it. I think it could have been longer, but it was a match of all like 10-minute or slightly longer matches. So like all of the matches were really good. Hikaru Shida and Penelope Ford put on one of like top 3 women's matches in AEW like so far. It was really good. Penelope Ford like really shined, like looked like a superstar. She's so athletic, and Hikaru Shida is just a great worker. And I think both of those women are really coming into their own. And it helps that like Kenny Omega like outlines those matches, right? Like you can see like his influence on that. And I think especially probably takes the negativity about the women's division directly to heart, because it's like kind of his baby. But once he has like people to work with and like workers, because like I imagine Kenny Omega lays out a match in his mind and he's like, oh yeah, you just do that. But like if you're not Kenny Omega, like it's kind of hard to do that, right? So whatever that is,
right? It's the same reason they always said Magic Johnson was a shitty NBA coach, because Magic Johnson was so good that he'd be like, yeah, you just do this, guys, and everybody's like, well, we can't do that because we're not Magic Johnson. I'm sure it's the same idea with Kenny Omega laying out a match.
For sure, but they like totally performed, and I totally agree about the TNT Championship match. Like really smart booking, protected both guys really well, and still had a very entertaining match. And they really made a big deal about Hager hitting that ref, like it was like, you know, really like not cool. Like, and I liked that they treated it like a real thing. Like this prize fighter like hit just this regular guy, right? Like,
yes.
you know,
Yeah. Hager's back
like,
on his heel shit, man. Everybody always made fun of me because I was really high on Jack Swagger. I really enjoyed his championship run on SmackDown probably 10 years ago, and I've been made fun of in several circles about doing that. But when he's employed correctly, and I feel like AEW in particular has been using him really well, and they've been using him sparingly as a big in the inner circle. But that was a good match. And we always talk about Cody being able to tell stories, and of course that's true, but Hager pulled his weight there too, didn't you think?
Absolutely, for sure. And we were talking via text last night, group text with Tinder, and not on Tinder, with Tinder, and said, Catalina, who would have thought that she's such a great heel, like Jake Hager's real life wife is like a total like beacon of light as far as like heel shit on a show full of great heels. Like she like really shines, which is funny. But yeah, like the private party and inner circle match, like you said, they're going over, that kind of replaces the Moxley Brian Cage match, at least for like a time slot on next week. And we got, Matt Hardy with them, so they're kind of getting a push. They're still pretty green. That match was good, but it was another example of, they're still very early in their career. There was some slip ups, live TV and all that. And the tag match for the main event was a lot of fun. Nobody expected Best Friends to win it, but they wrestled a really good match and brought out their characters and also showed that they could go. Sue Bennett, Trent Beretta, or Sue Beretta, not Bennett, Sue Beretta, Trent Beretta's mom, dropping them off in the white minivan was so good. And we also didn't mention that Jericho on commentary throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I mean, that's huge for these empty arena shows to have Jericho, because he's just such a personality. He's obviously one of the greatest of all time, and he's one of the greatest he's perfect on commentary just to heel it up, because none of those three guys are really heels. Ross, Shivani, and Excalibur all play it pretty close to the vet, or play it pretty down the middle, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, they're. I love the dynamic. There is no your typical kind of, I say WWE, but it's not just WWE. It's historically too. You would have heel babyface announcers. That's kind of what a 2-man booth would often look like. And this is a 3-man booth, which is kind of typical of modern WWE as well. But they're all just like announcers, right? Like they just act like they're regular people, and they act like this is a real sport. And I feel like that's like the better way to be. I mean, we all can, think of like plenty of like amazing examples of, heel announcers, and, like Bobby Heenan comes to mind, right? Jerry the King Lawler.
Sure.
These guys that, we look back on fondly. But it is nice to just have like an actual heel come in and like do that stuff, because then you have a credible announce team, and like when they tell you something, you like believe them because they're credible, right? Like, and they're not going to relinquish their credibility by like lying to your face about some shit. They're not going to, like with COVID, right? They'll just straight up tell you like John Moxley's at home because his wife tested positive for COVID.
Right.
Like
yes.
they're not saying like, oh, some travel issues with John Moxley, our champion, and like whatever. Like they tell you.
Yeah, and as an organization, as a promotion, they took that and really spun it into gold with Taz's promo. I thought that was really the best way they could have used it, because they turned it into heat, and
so good.
Taz and Brian Cage were just really playing their parts so well. I mean, I've always been a Taz guy. I've always liked him, even back when he first came to WWE back in 98 or 99, and then when I went back and watched all his ECW stuff. I've always been a Taz guy, and he is perfect in this role. Just perfect.
Yeah, I was lucky enough that my grandparents' cable, I could get ECW, like starting in like in St. Louis, like it was in St. Louis County, lived in Spanish Lake. I think it was Charter. It was a cable box. It was like a brown cable box, and it had red like numbers on it. Like,
yeah, I'm
like
old enough to remember those.
Clock.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I was
and it went
able to
like
watch
2 through
ECW on
it
that.
went like 2 through 13, and then you might have like 46-2 or something.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And like I was able to watch ECW and like old like USWA and some stuff from Memphis back then. And I had it all charted out, and I would like spend the summers like trying to like watch like weird wrestling that wasn't like, you know, the normal stuff. And it was super cool. But yeah, like Taz was always dumping people on their heads, which I thought was awesome when I was a kid. But like as an adult, I'm like, oh my God.
I know, man.
But yeah, he's always been good.
Yeah, so I think overall, especially doing what they can considering the circumstances, I thought they hit a home run, and I'm excited for next week. There was only one little downtime in the night. Do you think can you guess what it is?
Are you talking about the Janela Archer thing?
No.
That's the only other thing I could remember, which I thought was hilarious, that Janela couldn't get his shirt off.
You don't remember?
Just laughing his ass off at him.
You don't remember Darby Allin's little black and white skate video?
Yeah, damn. See, that was a highlight for me. How many times do you think it took him to do that backflip onto that skateboard?
Oh, I mean, he's a talented dude. That looked tough.
Yeah.
I would say.
But you didn't like it?
No, I didn't. It just doesn't fit in with the wrestling show to me. It was all black and white, and it looked kind of chintzy. And, you know, like I said before, I like Darby Allin as a talent. I like his character. I just don't like the skateboarding thing. And obviously,
I know that he sends all those videos in, like, because he's actually kind of an aspiring filmmaker too. Like, he makes those videos and he sends them stuff all the time, and they use it or they don't. But yeah, they use that one for sure.
I will ask you about the backflip onto the skateboard thing at the edge of the ramp, and then he went down the ramp on it, and you can tell he was psyched that he hit it. I'd say it probably took him more than 10 times. Maybe not.
Oh, yeah. I think so. I think he probably ate it 20 to 30 times.
But, man, if you overshoot that, you can really fuck yourself up.
Oh, yeah. And skateboarding's just so... It's, like, harder on your body than, like, wrestling is. But
yeah.
I tell you what, demographic-wise, like, we are not the demographic that is shooting for. If I was, like, the age that I was talking about when I was, like, searching out wrestling and stuff, like, and I was, like, 10 years old or 13 years old, if I would have saw that shit, like, I'd be Googling Darby Allin, YouTube, and, like, as much as I possibly could. Like, I think he's money for that demographic, which is the demographic that is money.
Yes.
So.
I totally get it that I'm out of the 18 to 39 range now. Oh, my God. Is it 18 to 39 or 18 to 49? Which one's?
49. You're still in it, baby.
Oh, fuck
Jason's
man.
Out.
Yeah, Jason's been out for years. So, yeah. So let's go over to the other part of the wrestling evening, which was the Great American Bash on NXT, which wasn't as good. It was still strong, though. Tegan Nox goes over in the Fatal 4-Way, so she is the number one contender for the belt, for the women's championship belt. I particularly liked Timothy Thatcher versus Oney Lorcan. I've always been a bit of an Oney Lorcan mark. This match did nothing to change my mind because it was so hard-hitting, and both those guys seemed to be having a blast out there. I fucking love that match.
Yeah, it was my most look forward to match of the night, and it delivered. That Jungle Boy, Luchasaurus, MJF, Wardlow match was so good that it kind of overshadowed it. But it was the best match on NXT. It was great.
Yeah, I agree. Before we move on, let's go back to Fyter Fest real fast because I forgot to say something about the announcing. Is that JR has made some real strides in announcing. He seemed kind of disinterested when he first joined up with AEW, like back when he was doing New Japan too, when he didn't know any of the guys. And he seemed kind of, like I said, disinterested when he came to AEW. Now that he knows the players and now that he knows the moves, I think that he's improved a great deal. Would you agree?
Oh, for sure, yeah. And I feel like, it was just unfamiliarity, right? And now that he's there, week in, week out,
he had also just lost. He had also just lost his wife in that tragic. I think she was on a moped or something really weird, but it wasn't her fault. She got hit by a drunk driver, and he was. I listened to his podcast a couple times back then, and he was pretty bitter. I mean, as would be expected, but he seems to have really kind of gotten into it. The only thing I wrote down last night though was that JR loves talking about the officiating because he talks about the officiating all the time.
Oh yeah, you always got your tropes, right? And JR does go to that trope.
Oh, he talks about it all the time. But anyway, we also had Rhea Ripley versus Aaliyah last night on NXT. Rhea Ripley is a really impressive athlete, man. She was doing some stuff that was a lot of fun to watch. We had Roderick Strong versus Loomis. They kind of that was. I really don't know what they're going for there. It doesn't seem like the NXT of old to me. It seems a lot more, for lack of a better term, main rostery, where it's a lot more like, I just think that Dexter Loomis is a goofy character, and it doesn't really...
He really is, and they're like all in with him, because you got Roderick Strong, who's one of the best workers like they have.
Yes.
And it is incredibly difficult to have a bad Roderick Strong match, and they succeeded last night, and it was way too long, and
boring.
The gimmick, it was very boring. Like, my idea, I've seen strap matches that work. Like the one that I always think of is Sting and Vader. I think it was at a Super Brawl, like whenever I was a kid.
Yeah.
And that match was awesome.
Yeah.
And you only pull this gimmick out whenever it's gonna be something great. And this is just like the gimmick almost buries Roddy because you're just telling them that he's afraid, and you're telling the audience that Roderick Strong is afraid of this guy.
Yeah, and they set it up with weeks of skits of him being in therapy or whatever. And they set it up for weeks of skits when I think that Roderick Strong, personally, and I've said this before, he's my favorite in the Undisputed Era. He might not be the best. I think he's the best worker. He might not have the best character, best overall character, but he's my favorite. And I just think wasting him by jobbing him out to Dexter Loomis, who is almost like a Kane character without the mask, without the hocus pocus. You know what I mean? He's just like,
yeah, he's like, or the Fiend without the charisma. It's just
right.
He just doesn't sell. It's just he just stands there and stares, and I don't know why they're so all in on him. Like, I'm sure he's like a good guy or whatever, and like he's got some like cool moves and stuff, but I don't like that. I don't like whenever people don't sell.
Yeah.
It just sucks. It makes for a boring match.
Right. It takes, I mean, the only people that really shouldn't be selling is like Keith Lee when he's fighting somebody smaller, or if Marco Stunt's coming after Lance Archer, or Braun Strowman against a whole bunch of guys. Huge guys. If that's part of their gimmick and they're fighting against someone a lot smaller, but Roderick Strong and Dexter Loomis are pretty much the same size. That's why we hated that Seth Rollins Bray Wyatt match when Bray Wyatt took like 15 stomps or whatever the fuck it was. We didn't like it because selling is the most important thing. I remember John Moxley being on Colt Cabana's podcast, and he said that he didn't really like wrestling in Ring of Honor because they don't put a premium on selling in Ring of Honor, and selling is the storytelling, right? Pardon for the rhyme, but that's
why like your best wrestlers, like a Tanahashi, Tanahashi's good on offense, but like that guy sells like literally nobody else. Like that's why he's one of the greatest. Like,
dude,
it's a pure babyface who can sell.
The Rock The Rock would sell his ass off all the time. The Rock made everybody look unbelievable against him.
Even Brock Lesnar, who's a monster, sells. He sells really well.
He sells really well. And when like Brock Lesnar's, reeling because somebody hit a few moves on him, you're like, oh shit, here we go. Like it gets you into the match. That's telling a story within the match. And I agree completely. When you have a guy like Dexter Lumis who just doesn't sell, it just takes you out of it. It's not the type of wrestling that I like. Ric Flair. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Like,
I feel like the theme of the night for NXT, it was a above average NXT Wednesday. But whereas with AEW, every match could have gone longer and I would have been happy with it. I feel like almost every match in the NXT card went too long. And it was like the Rhea match, that was like a total gimmick. It made her look pretty good, but it did not need to go 10 minutes or whatever. And that strap match did not need to go 10 minutes.
Right.
And even the 4-way, like, it was just like kind of a spot fest. And like, I like all those women and they did a good job, but like, I didn't necessarily love like how it was laid out.
It went really long.
Yeah, it felt long, whereas nothing on AEW like felt long, like at all. It just worked. And
that Darby Allin video, that felt really long to me.
God damn it.
But no, I get exactly. I'm just fucking around. I get exactly what you're saying. The AEW could have been an entire pay-per-view for me. They could have stretched it into 3 hours, maybe added one more match, but that's how much I enjoyed it. I do like Santos Escobar. I do like him and Drake Maverick having a feud because that's such a classic wrestling feud with the little underdog story against the big bad guy with his team of bad guys, So I'm pro that. What do you think about Sasha versus Io Shirai?
Really, like, well wrestled, like, for the most part. I enjoyed the match itself. I totally expected some kind of fucky finish. Like, I was not outraged about it. Like, right. I saw a little bit of outrage online. I was not online that much, but saw a little bit. I'm like, but what did you expect? Like, they got to protect the champion, and they're going to protect Sasha. Like, ain't no way. Like, actually, I kind of expected, if there wasn't a funky finish, like Sasha to just pin Io. Like, that's just kind of how they do business.
Yeah, it's one of those matches where you're not exactly upset with the funky finish, like you said.
Yeah, because you just expect it. But it sets up a dope tag team match probably for next week, right? We're probably going to have Io and Asuka versus Bayley and Sasha, which sounds money to me.
Yes, that sounds fucking awesome. And yeah, so did we even talk about the Great American Bash happening this week? Did we talk about it last week? Because I don't even remember hearing about it until Monday night when I was watching Raw.
Yeah, we talked about it counter programming, like in general. We didn't talk about the card or anything because really, like, that's the difference between Fyter Fest and Great American Bash. Great American Bash was counter programmed, so they had a couple matches they threw together and they had some stuff that they had been working on. But Fyter Fest all of those stories have been booked for weeks, so that's why it was a better show, because it was just longer term like booking.
I did like MJF bringing up that he's leading out the show because they're in the middle of a ratings war.
Oh man, and he's just so good old school wise. Like, I mean, he totally shot on that. It's great, but he comes out in that hideous robe and these pink trunks.
Yeah.
I mean, that is classic.
Yeah.
Like, that is old school heel heat shit.
Yeah.
And he's so good at it.
He's a throwback, and he's not even old enough to remember that shit.
No, like, from what I understand, though, from what I've heard, like, people have talked to him as far as, actually, like, just about the business and stuff. Like, all he talks about is stuff that happened before he was born. And, like, that's the stuff that he watches, like, and, like, the niche stuff, like Roddy Piper, but Roddy Piper, like, in Oregon.
Right.
And, like,
yeah.
shit like that.
Memphis wrestling, stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And you can see it in his ideas, like those T-shirts that he was wearing about banging Diamond Dallas Page's daughter and
Yes.
stuff. Like, that's totally a Roddy Piper thing. Roddy Piper used to make his own T-shirts and wear them like in Oregon to get heat.
Right. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to next week. We'll have some predictions for next week coming up. Jason sent it his, but for now, let's get to that 2 count.
1, 2, 3.
All right, Zach, what's the 2 count?
God, I'm a fucking gimmick. What's the 2 count?
So it's your favorite type of wrestling.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. It's the New Japan Cup. Yeah.
Yes.
That's good stuff. I'm such a gimmick.
You are a gimmick, man.
Dude, like, I'm not even joking. Like, I had no idea. We actually had 2 shows this week, but I actually only watched one of them because, so on New Japan World, if you are a subscriber, like there's like a section for like new and like featured, and then there's a section for like English content. And I always just jump right to the English content, but I forget that Kevin Kelly is not actually in Japan, so there is a small delay. Like, he watches the shows and then he does the commentary here in America remotely. So we did actually have 2 shows, but I watched the July 1st show.
Okay, good.
Which was yesterday.
Yes, I was going to say, if you only watched the first one, I mean, the second one was so you saw the show versus Sonata and Ibushi versus Taichi?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, because that was the better one. All right, well, let's talk about that one first. I can run over the other one after we're done, because I watched them both. But yeah, let's run over that one first. So we had Mushi versus Yoshi-Hashi.
Yeah, Yoshi-Hashi went over in that one. That was like a fine match. Like, those guys are both like fine wrestlers. Yoshi-Hashi, getting a win, I feel like, was probably just good because like LIJ has been like incredibly dominant in this tournament. So otherwise, you just got a whole bunch of LIJ people in there. But then we had Sho and Sonata, which was arguably like, I'd say it's one of the better matches of the Cup so far. Like, what do you think?
I thought I think it was my favorite. I've always been a big Sonata guy. Sho has obviously been. I know he's been kind of on everybody's radar since last year, but he's really stepping his game up, and having matches like this against Sonata make him kind of a one to watch, like probably a major player in the years to come, right?
Oh, I think so too. Like, he is, I would not call Yo a Jannetty, but Sho is definitely the Shawn Michaels, right? Like, Yo is like a really good baby face, and I think he could be a good singles wrestler for sure, but like Sho is very obviously being groomed to be that singles wrestler, that young star. Like, we're going to be watching this guy in singles matches for years to come, and we're going to enjoy it.
Yeah. It's, as a side note, it's just got to suck to be Marty Jannetty and just like, like you're basically a euphemism as being, the lesser of the lesser of a tag team. I mean, poor bastard.
I know, and I feel like it's not even an indictment on Jannetty, because Jannetty's like, I mean, this sounds terrible because, like, I mean, obviously he'd like go off on me if you hear me say it, but like, he's a good hand, but it's just that Shawn Michaels is so transcendent as far as work goes.
Yeah, there's never been a tag team that was so over, shot out of the gate as young people that had just become one of the greatest of all time, inarguably one of the greatest of all time if you're talking about American wrestling or North American wrestling, and a guy that just kind of fell by the wayside. Because it wouldn't be a big it wouldn't be a big deal if the Rockers weren't a big deal, but the Rockers were a big deal. They were a big deal when I was 9 years old. The Rockers were the biggest fucking deal in the world, man. I loved them. But
yeah, they were a great tag team.
I remember when I was 9 sitting next to my grandfather, though, and I said to Grandpa, Grandpa, that Shawn Michaels, he's going to become one of the greatest of all time, and Marty Jannetty's probably going to fall by the wayside. And Grandpa was like, I think you're probably right. I mean, I called it way back then. I'm talking about 1988, all right? 1989, something like that. But anyway, Sho versus Sonata was very good. Sonata goes over. Next up, we had Ibushi versus Taichi, and I'm eager to hear your thoughts on this one, Zach.
I mean, you got to call this an upset, right? Just because Ibushi is legitimately like one of the best workers in the world. Like, you know, that's one of those, like you said, inarguably, right? Like, Kota Ibushi, one of the best wrestlers in the world.
Yeah.
He's also a current champion. It's tag champion with one of the greatest of all time. So it's kind of like the super team. And I mean, there was some fuckery. There was some, ref bumpage. There was some outside interference.
There was a lot. There was a lot of outside interference. I mean, it was almost like a tag match at certain points where Zack Sabre Jr. and Tanahashi were out there just fighting each other at the same time.
Oh yeah, for sure. And they're in there like doing sling blades and shit. Like it was almost outrageous. But I feel like you get this every now and then with Gedo and New Japan. It was especially bad with the Bullet Club, like back in the day. But you still see it. And it doesn't necessarily bother me as much as it doesn't leave as bad of a taste in my mouth as some of the WWE booking, because I feel like there's just more content and you see more of it and it's less satisfying. But it is a bummer. Right?
It also doesn't happen in New Japan. It doesn't happen in main events. It doesn't happen in big matches. Now this is a big match because it's the New Japan Cup, but it's not the end of Wrestle Kingdom or something, or it's not. It's not happening at Dominion. You know, it's happening in the second round of the New Japan Cup between two guys that are really fucking good. You know, and if that's the way to protect Ibushi, because they feel like obviously they're telling a story here with Taichi, because again he was roughing Ibushi up. Like they're kind of making Taichi even more so in the last two matches. Look like a real big badass, like a bruiser, you know.
Dude, for real. Like, I mean, I'll say like this. Like, I did not see the second night. I know the results because I looked at them, but like after watching this, I was like, I feel like this is like Taichi's like tournament, right? Like they've really been putting him over in this tournament.
That's kind of what I was thinking after this match also. It's like, those are two upsets, you know? Two upsets in a row over two mega powers in New Japan. So
I think they did it though because now that I see that he did lose his next match against Sonata, they did it because now Taichi has gone over both of the tag team champions, and their logical booking means like, all right, Zack Sabre and Taichi deserve a shot at those heavyweight tag team titles. So I think we're going to get that in Dominion. I had mentioned that last week, but now it's like patently obvious. Like this is what's happening. So we'll see how it goes. I don't know if they will get them. I kind of want Ibushi and Tanahashi to stick around just selfishly because that's super cool, but that's not a permanent tag team situation. So who knows?
Ooh. Wait a minute. Hold on a second. You're saying that Taichi lost already to Sonata?
Yeah, on the next night.
Wait a minute. What night was that? I didn't see that.
It was July 2nd this morning. Taichi and Sonata. So Sonata went over Sho, Taichi went over Ibushi, and then Taichi and Sonata had a 22-minute and 50-second match, apparently.
Hold on, that's what I thought I was... Motherfucker. Oh, that already happened. Oh, shit, I didn't see that. Spoiler alert. God damn it, no.
Oh, yeah, I didn't see it either, so you didn't watch that night either. Okay.
No, I thought you were talking about the night that had Nagada versus Okada.
Oh, no, that was last week.
But we didn't talk about that last week, though, did we?
No, because I hadn't watched. It was the same kind of deal that had happened like that morning, so I hadn't watched it. Jason was the only one who watched it. I watched it this week, like I caught up with it. But yeah, there was a match. There was a show this morning. If you didn't watch this morning,
no, I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we had Goto versus Evil. Evil went over, which was cool. It was a fine match. Both those guys. I like Evil a lot. Goto's fine. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I like them both a lot. I feel like I like them like kind of both the same. They're both really good and similar styles.
Yeah, they're similar.
Super hard hitting.
For sure.
But yeah, so quick rundown for those of you guys for spoilers. And it's not spoilers because it already happened, but we had Ishii and Takahashi Hiromu. Hiromu goes over Ishii, so we're now going to have in the semifinals Takahashi and Okada, which is dope because Okada went over Ishimori, and Sonata went over Taichi, like we said. Evil goes over Yoshihashi, which is kind of expected. So we have Sonata versus Evil, which is awesome because they're in the same faction. So.
Yeah. Well, they were a tag team for a long time. If they're not anymore.
Oh yeah, like a legit tag team, like tag team champions. Like I think never triple tag team. So with Takahashi and Okada and Sonata and Evil, I mean you have your possible Okada Sonata, like, but we've seen that like 10 times and it's always good. But you also have Evil Takahashi, which is again they're in the same faction. And also, I mean, either one. If Hiromu wins, like he's gonna face somebody from this faction. So,
yeah, I just want to point out that when I filled out my bracket, my final four was Takahashi versus Okada and Sonata versus Goto. So I had 3.
Oh, you were really close then.
Yeah, I had 3 out of 4, which I feel pretty good about.
Yeah, you were really close.
Let's talk for a minute about that one that we didn't get a chance to talk about last week because Ishimori versus Kanemaru was fine. Ishii versus Makabe. Or sorry, how do you say his name?
Makabe.
Makabe. That was really slow. I know Makabe's old. That was pretty slow. Nagada versus Okada.
I liked it a lot though. I know he's like slow, but maybe it's because of like Ishii. I mean, Makabe is like total like classic like dude, but like he doesn't move as well as like Nagata, right?
Yeah, they had a couple old dudes because Nagata Okada, but Okada was really healing it up against Nagata.
Yeah, for sure.
And then go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying like I didn't mind that match like so much, but maybe it's partly because like I'm such a Stone Pitbull fan.
Oh, I love the Stone Pitbull too. Don't think that you're a bigger. No, you probably are. I do say I do want a Stone Pitbull shirt though. But then we got to talk about the match of the tournament thus far, and I'm sure Jason would agree that it was Yano versus Hiromu. That ended. First of all, I'm not being a contrarian, and I'm not pretending that I like Yano matches more than I do just to be funny. I'm really not. I think that Yano comedy matches are legit maybe the only comedy matches that I've ever liked in wrestling. And when he comes in spraying hand sanitizer and he's cut Hiromu's hair before and Hiromu's scared of him and he keeps pulling out scissors and clippers and Hiromu's wearing a helmet so that Yano can't get to his hair. And then the match ends with Hiromu tying him up and putting tape around his face and putting him in an elevator and sending him down to the bottom floor so that he can't beat the count. I'm sorry, that's good shit, man. That's wrestling to me. That's the kind of wrestling that my grandfather, the aforementioned grandfather who disagreed with me about Marty Jannetty way back in the day, that's the kind of shit that he would have cackled at. I mean, he would have thought that was the funniest thing of all time. I don't actually think it was the best match of the tournament. I just want to say there's a place for that in wrestling.
Oh, I'll totally agree. There's definitely a place for it, and it's a little bit harder without fans. But I mean, those guys nailed it.
They nailed it.
Super fun.
It was still really funny. I
mean, look at a guy like there's a guy like Yano, and he's a shooter. Like he has like a winning MMA background, which people might not realize. But there's a guy like Takahashi who is like pro wrestling exemplified, right? One of the most charismatic people you've ever seen in your entire life, whether you were just walking down the street or whatever. Like you want to talk to Hiromu Takahashi.
Right.
And like the fact that he can pull off like being a legit badass, like arguably the best light heavyweight in the entire world right now. and also just be goofy and silly and not hurt his rep. Like that's really cool.
I think that's the most impressive thing about Yano matches, period, is that, you know, when he's in the G1, there's lots of guys that have good matches with him, that have good funny matches with him. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Like there's
that
tons.
Omega match that they did together, like I still think about that. I've watched that like multiple times.
Yeah, it's fucking great, man. It's really good stuff. And you can't say that about WWE because it's all Vince humor. And it's like
you'd have somebody pissing themselves. Like basically, like Takahashi would have thrown Yano into that elevator, and there would have been Yano would have been gone from the elevator mysteriously, but there would have been a puddle of piss.
Right. I just think about how much I used to hate Santino matches, and when Santino was in a tag team with Kozlov, and it's like nobody else. I don't know. I just think that's the brilliance of Yano. And I want to say that Jason's wrong. And that's going to do it for the 2. Let's get on to the 3 counts.
1, 2, 3.
You know, I only have 8 buttons on here to do sound effects, so I had to take off of Jason's. Oh, hell no. But that's what I would have pressed right there after I said that. So the 3 count.
That's a tragedy.
I know. It's tough, man. I still have cold-blooded, but, you know, that only goes so far. And we have to have the songs on there. There's so much stuff that I want to have on here, you know. But anyway, we're going to talk about our TakeOver DoOver. I have it on in the background right now. We're talking about NXT London back in December of 2015. The main event here was Samoa Joe versus the Demon Finn Balor. Nia Jax also fought Bayley for the belt, but the pay-per-view started off with Asuka versus Emma. Asuka going over here, Emma being accompanied by Dana Brooke. What'd you think of this match, Zach?
I loved it.
Yes.
Like I was like into it.
Mm-hmm.
Like from the first moment, like from Asuka's entrance, like and seeing how over she was, and like, you know, kind of that nostalgia factor of, you know, the whole Asuka's gonna kill you, and just Asuka just being like this total like sexy badass, right? Like she just murders people.
Yes. And
then like Emma coming out with Dana Brooke, which is like a good pairing. Like I wasn't watching. This was like right around the time I'd started watching, but NXT. But I did not watch this pay-per-view, so this was still the first time for me. But I mean, Emma, like now to Neil, like really like these ladies put on an excellent curtain jerker wrestling match. Loved it.
Yeah, what was your star rating?
I gave it 4 stars.
That is higher than what I gave it, but
it's the same thing I gave. I think it's the same thing I gave the 4-way where it was the 4 horsewomen, and
yes,
they did like this fatal 4-way, which was also awesome. I think it was the same star rating as that. I just really liked this match.
Not much more I can add to that. Emma was clearly somebody who had a ton of talent. You know, she's often credited with starting the women's revolution because it was her fans that got on Twitter and started hashtagging women's revolution because they were talking about Emma, or it was give women a chance or something, or give divas a chance. It was something to that effect. She obviously can work. I've seen her in real life. She's easy on the eyes. She's
very tiny too.
Yes, she's very small. This match fucking ruled. I gave it 3.5 stars. I wish Jason was here to defend himself because he gave it 2.5 stars.
What?
Yes.
I feel like I got to bring it up next week.
Yes, I know. It seems insane. I gave it 3.5, and the only reason I gave it 3.5 is because I couldn't give it 4 because I liked the other match better, but it was great. Next up, we had the Revival, and were they called the Revival here? I wrote down the Revival. I can't remember. Were they called the Mechanics?
Like Wikipedia has it as Dash and Dawson. So,
oh, okay.
I think they had dropped the Mechanics, but they had not picked up the Revival yet.
We had them versus Enzo and Cass. Pretty sure I brought this up last time. Enzo and Cass were in a match. Enzo and Cass had a great entrance, and you know, that's about it. I gave it 2 stars. What'd you think?
Yeah, I was a little bit kinder to it. I gave it 3.5 because, not 3.5. I'm sorry, I gave it 3. You said 2.5.
I said 2.
2.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I only gave it 3. I'm sorry. I gave it 3 stars.
Jason's right in between us with 2.75. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this entrance, like, I feel like it's really cool to see how over those guys were, but it's already, like, we've only seen it a couple times, and it's already kind of, like, lost its luster for me.
Well, they just did it every single time they came out. I mean, it's been done so many times. I mean, even Road Dogg and Billy Gunn, even they could work, you know?
Yeah. It's, the Revival's great, and they really carried this match. Like, it is definitely, I know people say, like, that, Enzo and Cass should have had a tag team title run, and I get it because they were, like, super over, but they were not good.
No, they weren't. Like I said, Jason was in between us at 2 3/4. Okay, next we have Apollo Crews versus Baron Corbin. Corbin goes over. I'm interested to hear what kind of rating you gave. Mine and Jason's already written down.
I actually gave it the worst rating of the show. It was 2 stars.
Of course, because it's boring as fuck, and it wasn't very long. I gave it 1.5 stars. Didn't enjoy it at all, and I like both these guys. I'm a Baron Corbin apologist. I won't call myself a mark, but I'll call myself an apologist. And I think the world of Apollo Crews, especially his in-ring ability. He's so athletic, you know what I mean?
Dude, he's really good. And
yes.
Actually, I would lean that way as, like, I've railed on Baron Corbin, but, like, literally none of it has been Baron Corbin's fault. It's all about his positioning, and I am a Baron Corbin apologist because, like, I've seen that dude in real life, and that dude comes off like a total star, and he knows what he's doing, and he, like, knows his, like, place, and he's just doing his job, and he's really good at it, and it's not his fault.
Yeah, I told you I worked at the bar on Friday, and I told you it was dead, so I had SmackDown on at the bar, and he cut a promo on The Undertaker that was really fucking good. I mean, it was really good. I think he's a great heel, and I think that he's an underrated worker. His booking is terrible. I gave it 1.5 stars. Jason Bell gave this match 2.75 stars.
Wow. And he, like, hates Baron Corbin.
Yes, Jason Bell gave this a higher star rating than Asuka Emma.
That's surprising.
I know. I'm starting to think maybe I wrote it down wrong from his text or something. Then we had Nia Jax versus Bayley. I'll go first here. It was fine. I mean, Bayley, they told a good story of the monster versus the baby face and the bigger person versus the smaller person. I gave it 2 stars. I mean, I didn't particularly love it. Jason gave it 2.5. What say you?
I gave it 2.5.
Yep.
So I thought it was, like, one of the better Nia Jax matches that I'd seen, and maybe it was because I have such, like, a low opinion now, and I was maybe more forgiving because this was 5 years ago, and she was, like, even greener.
Yes.
But I feel like Bayley, like, pulled it off. They'd really been pushing Nia Jax. Even just on these do-overs, I hadn't been watching the weekly shows, but we've been seeing these Nia Jax, like, I'm not like most girls, like, kind of
right
vignettes.
But I mean, we are 5 years out though, and you use the term even greener, not she was green back then. You said she was even greener because she still kind of sucks.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah, Bayley carried this one to whatever it was, but it was not great.
And then in the main event, we had Samoa Joe versus Finn Balor, the Demon Finn Balor, for the NXT belt. Jason and I had the exact same rating on this one. What you have?
4.25.
Ooh, that's higher than us.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Justify your star rating, Zach.
I'll justify it. So, part of it was, here's one thing. I was annoyed that he came out as the demon, and not for the reasons that you would be annoyed that he came out as the demon,
Sure.
but because I didn't know who was going to win, and that spoiled it for me because the demons never lost. So that was annoying for me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But the crowd was like mega into this, which put it slightly above the Asuka Emma match, and because there were higher stakes, right? Like,
Yes.
So I feel like my justification, like whenever I thought about it, like Asuka Emma was probably like my favorite match on the card, but when I looked at it, kind of tried to look at it more objectively, the crowd was just like really into this match because it was an NXT championship match. So I was like, well, it's got to kind of edge out that. And I had already given kind of my idea of like a subjective star rating to the curtain jerker. So I was like, well, it was just slightly better than that as far as overall like show quality. So that's where that's where it ended up.
Sure. Jason and I both gave it 3.5 stars. I won't disagree with anything that you said. I've been vocal about the demon being the boogeyman and everything like that. That doesn't take away from how great of a worker Finn Balor is. I love Samoa Joe. This was a great match. You know, great matches can have 3.5 stars. You know, Jim Edmonds can be a great center fielder and have a great career and not be a Hall of Famer. So that's my justification for having this at 3.5 stars. I did enjoy the match. Jason and I both have it at 3.5. That's why I said. So that was our NXT TakeOver DoOver. I wouldn't say that this was our favorite TakeOver. Correct? I mean, it still doesn't take the number one spot. We're trying to determine what the best TakeOver was of all time, which is the point of this. Next week, we are going to be talking about NXT TakeOver Dallas, which happened April 1st, 2016. So it was the WrestleMania NXT TakeOver. The match is in this. And I'm telling you guys this in case you want to watch this beforehand and, give your own star ratings. This is a bit of a stacked card. The main event, again, is Finn Balor against Samoa Joe. It's Asuka versus Bayley for the NXT Women's Championship. Austin Aries versus Baron Corbin. Austin Aries has been in the news lately for not great reasons. We have American Alpha versus The Revival for the Tag Team Championships. And then, Zach, I don't know if you've ever seen this match, but it's Nakamura's first WWE match against Sami Zayn.
Yeah, I've actually watched this entire card before, but it was a long time ago. Whenever I first got back into wrestling, this was like right around the time. And I'm not saying I watched this live because I did not, but I remember like whenever I had a WWE Network subscription, I was like, all right, I'm going to go watch some of this like NXT stuff. And this card, this whole thing is like bonkers good. Like I can't tell you any specifics now because it's been years,
right?
But like I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh, I've seen this, and it's all awesome.
Yeah, we're starting to get into the takeovers when they start to become real takeovers. Like there wasn't. I mean, there might have been a bit of a letdown in the Baron Corbin match on the one that we just talked about, but the one that we're doing next week, if I remember correctly, is a fucking banger. And that Nakamura Sami Zayn,
has to be.
That Nakamura Sami Zayn match is a banger.
It absolutely is. Like, I mean, I would be surprised if like that might get our first 5-star rating.
Yeah, I'm just looking at, I mean, I know who wins, obviously. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody who didn't watch, but it does have a time of 20 minutes and 7 seconds. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to watching that next week. And hopefully you guys will watch along with us. You guys can send your star ratings if you want to, but that's going to do it for...
I also just got to say before we move on real quick, I think one of the reasons, and this is me being a total Johnny Mark, but I think one of the reasons that we have not gotten to takeovers that are truly transcendent is Johnny Gargano has not been on any of them yet.
I mean, that is an opinion. Finn Balor has been on 2, though, already, or maybe 3. Finn Balor is also very good. Obviously, Johnny Gargano's the best. When I say when we're getting into because TakeOver's somewhere around this time, and it probably is more about when they got to that Sami Zayn Nakamura match, is when it was like, oh shit, maybe we can just have 5 crazy matches in a row, have every single one of them be awesome, not have a reason for a popcorn match, and just have a great 2-hour and 20-minute show. And
yeah, this looks like the first time that they're doing that.
yes, I'm looking forward to talking about this next week, unless, somebody dies or something. But that's going to do it for our 3 counts.
1, 2, 3.
All right, let's do some predictions, and then we'll get some odds and ends. Okay, so we're talking about Fyter Fest for next week. And the first match that I'm going to ask you about is Colt Cabana and the Dark Order versus SCU. What do you got, Zach?
I actually did not know about this one.
It's a 6-man tag.
Oh, yeah, okay. So 6-man total. I did know about this. Yeah, so it's like total 6-man. Storytelling wise, I think it's just the way to go is Colt Cabana. Like, it's all about, this whole thing's about Colt Cabana. So I'm going to go with them, Dark Order.
That is what I'm going with, too. That's what Jason's going with. We have Lance Archer versus Joey Janela. I'll go first. I'm going to take Lance Archer. I think he's basically only had one big match so far, and he lost it. I think there's no reason to have him lose the second one, especially to Joey Janela, who's at this point, I mean, I hate to say this, but he's an enhancement talent in AEW. Like, he's not really doing anything. He's not really in a program. He's not in a tag team. He's not fighting for any belts. And Lance Archer is somebody that they're probably trying to do something with, so I'll take Archer.
Yeah, I say it's tough because I know that, everybody's high on Janela because he's like, even though he's like seems like a total piece of shit, he's like a totally like solid dude, and he's like really smart for the business, like really smart. But I think Archer's
and still really young, only 31.
Yeah, Archer's young by WWE standards at least.
Yes.
But yeah, Archer's the play here. Like you said, like if he wouldn't have lost that much to Cody so recently, and I don't know if he's been on Dark or not. Like nobody does. Like so he needs some wins.
Yeah, don't get me started on WWE's age range, because this last week on Raw, they had Big Show win a handicap match against Angel Garza and Andrade Cien Almas with a double choke slam because the 2 guys couldn't get along. So if you're wondering why we don't talk, if you're wondering why we don't talk about Raw and SmackDown anymore, everybody, that's why we don't talk about it, because there's nothing to talk about. Because it's infuriating bullshit where the Big Show is going over 2 of their biggest up-and-coming guys, 2 of their most talented guys that they have, putting in work while everybody else is staying home because they're trying to avoid the global pandemic. And instead of having those guys kill Big Show like they should, they have Big Show going over both of them in a handicap match.
He's heating up.
It's the worst.
It's infuriating.
This is like actual WCW stuff, like, and I don't mean like people think of like the ridiculousness of like 2001 WCW and how like absolutely obnoxious the booking was and stuff, but I'm talking about like 1998, whenever things were actually like the writing was on the wall, but they were able to last for a couple of years. Like the writing was on the wall because they were not going with new talent. Think of all of the people that they had when they lost, like, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Jericho, Juventud Guerrero, like all these people, and they kept putting Macho Man and even Ric Flair, who's like one of the greatest of all time, but they kept putting him on TV, and Hogan and Nash and all these guys, and no, like stop it. Like we don't need Edge and Christian on TV. Yeah, they're great, but give me Andrade and Angel Garza, give me Apollo Crews, give me Aleister Black,
give me Chad Gable.
Those are the people. Yeah, Chad Gable. Those are the people that I want to see, and I want to see them do well.
I'm glad we're on the same page. We have FTR and the Young Bucks versus the Bold and the Beautiful and the Lucha Brothers. Who are you taking?
This is tough, but because this match is gonna be so good. But I feel like FTR is not losing. Like, I don't think they're losing until after they take these tag titles. So I'm going with FTR and the Young Bucks.
That's exactly what I'm going, and that's exactly what Jason's going. I see what you're saying. I mean, I guess they could tell the story to where, like, FTR and the Young Bucks get into it while they're in the match because they have friction, they have heat, and that would cause the Bold and the Beautiful and the Lucha Brothers to slide in there and get the victory. But I can't see the Butcher and the Blade getting a victory in this match. I just can't do it. They are the odd men out in this match because these are three of the greatest tag teams in the world, and the Butcher and the Blade. So I'm taking FTR and the Young Bucks, as is Jason. We have, for the tag belts, Kenny Omega and Adam Hangman Page versus Private Party. I am taking Omega and Page. They didn't show any signs of breaking up last night, even though the Revival came in there to share beers with them, and Page didn't look all that interested in it. But who you got?
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine picking Private Party. Like, it's Omega and Page, like, are not losing these titles to anybody except a major big team.
So, taking Omega and Page also. And for the last match of the night, Jericho versus Orange Cassidy. I'll tell you that Jason has taken Orange Cassidy. I'm not going to tell you I had taken yet, even though I've already written it down, and I will not change it. Who you got?
Just the fact that Jericho has not been pinned in singles competition outside of his loss of the title. He's been pinned by Scorpio Sky in a tag match, and he's been pinned by Jon Moxley. I don't see him being pinned by Orange Cassidy, even though I don't think it would be a bad move. I just think it's one of those deals where you're in the ring with Jericho and you actually get the rub and it actually works, unlike WWE, because he's not going to bury him. But I am taking Jericho.
I am taking Jericho also, and I probably couldn't have said it any better myself. There is no world in which putting Orange Cassidy over Jericho in a singles match makes sense unless there's some sort of outside interference, which I guess there could be some wonky shit. But like you said, he hasn't lost. He hasn't been pinned in a singles match except for by Jon Moxley. So I'm taking Y2J also. There's also Nyla Rose versus TBA. I'm going to leave that one off just because we don't know who it is. But
that's nothing.
Yeah, those are our predictions. Oh, wait. I turned it down. Hold on. Ah, shit. We're going to let the music ride out for a little bit. So some odds and ends here. You want to talk about Tessa Blanchard getting dropped from Impact, huh?
Yeah, so Tessa Blanchard released from Impact. From what I understand, like, her contract was up soon anyway, so this was kind of like they had not come to terms. I know there was like some issues where she lives in Mexico. She's not coming to tapings, which is totally understandable. They had asked for some promo footage, which is also a very reasonable request, and she had not delivered that. And she was planning on no-showing the show that she was booked at, which was I think a 5-way for the heavyweight championship, which she is the world heavyweight champion of Impact. So, yeah, like, I think this was kind of like, you know, Impact realizing they were at an impasse, not going to come to a new contract, and then also getting some good karma for releasing Tessa because she's such a goddamn problem.
Yeah, what was the deal? She said the N-word, or like there's reports of her saying the N-word a bunch of times or something?
Yeah, like in the locker room, getting into an altercation with a black, colleague and using the N-word. And she's just been very abrasive and just like a total like burning bridges like everywhere she goes. Like apparently maybe burning crosses too. I don't know.
As they would say in her hometown of Mexico, no bueno.
No bueno.
This is bad. From
So
Ringside.
stupid. We also have WWE digging in really hard on this Undertaker's retiring thing, but he never said he was retiring in that documentary. Like, and you don't think
He
that
said if Vince calls and he's in trouble, like, you know, we'll have to see.
Yeah, and I really don't like the bunch of wrestlers standing around without masks on yelling, "Thank you, Taker." It just looks so stupid. Anyway, when you think about Undertaker, what do you think of first and foremost?
I mean, like, you obviously think like legend, because he's like one of like the kind of tried and true old school guys, like lived the gimmick, didn't like break character until very recently. Always booked strong, hardly ever lost, even in the Attitude Era when Triple H was like beating everybody.
Yes.
You know, so like if you're in your WWE bubble, like you're gonna call him the greatest of all time. Like if you're just like in a pure WWE watching thing, like he's gonna be on your like Rushmore. And like he's good. He's definitely, you know, the Phenom is like the whole thing. He's put on some really great matches and he did it for a long time. But like Vince McMahon kind of deserves credit for The Undertaker almost as much as The Undertaker does.
Yeah, I mean, yes, the character was Vince's creation, but Vince kind of stumbled into it. I mean, because it was one of Vince's stupid things, like, "Oh, let's make him an Undertaker." You know, let's make him a dentist. You know, like he threw out all sorts of shit like that. Like everybody just had an occupation. So I'll push back on that a little bit, just because I think that Undertaker was so good at what he did. When I think of him, I think of those two Shawn Michaels matches at WrestleMania, which to me was his apex, because that's pretty late for a guy his size to peak. But those were the two best matches he ever put on, if you ask me.
Absolutely.
Back to back. Jason was at one of them. But I also think of, and I'll speak for Jason here just because I remember this is the first argument that Jason and I ever got into about wrestling, because we were talking about the Undertaker's undefeated streak. And Jay Bell was pissed off because Undertaker wasn't putting guys over. And, you know, this was back in 2006, 2007. I mean, Jason was pissed off that Undertaker wasn't putting enough guys over. And I don't think that's Undertaker's fault, because it seems like Undertaker always tried to do what was best for business. He doesn't,
except when it came to the WCW guys. Like he would put over, I think he would have put over people if he thought it was good for business, but like he's such a Vince dude, like he hated those WCW guys.
There was some story about how he wouldn't put over Booker T or maybe it was Benoit.
DDP.
Or DDP. That was the other one, when DDP was stalking him and his wife, Sarah, his first wife. But I mean, he's obviously incredible talent. I mean, he doesn't need me, a 40-year-old dude sitting in his basement, to tell him that. Obviously, he fucking rules. Those were his two best matches. I'll always say this, though. I enjoyed the American Badass version of Undertaker better because it was less cartoony. That's just me. Any last words on Undertaker before we get out of here?
Nah, not really. Like, for his sake, like, I hope he can, like, find some like peace or like or at least like some I don't know how to say it, like at least like, are you trying to say
that you want him to rest in peace?
I just want him to like not feel like he has to come back, because that last match with AJ, if it was the last match, it was a really good one.
It's a good way to go out. And if it was his last match, that means his last wrestling move of all time was getting an earth mover and dumping dirt on top of AJ Styles' coffin.
This is
Yeah.
Man from Ringside.
All right, we got some birthdays. I kind of jumped the gun last week. Scotty Too Hottie. Charles Robinson is 56. Bret Hart is 63. Their birthday is actually today. Happy birthday, Lil Nate and Bret the Hitman. Joey Janela, the aforementioned, is 31. Barry Windham, Bray Wyatt's namesake, his real first name is Windham, is 60. Sid Vicious is also 60. Hillbilly Jim, 68. Adam Cole, is 31. Lars Sullivan, we hardly knew ye, is 32. And Marcel Barthel of Imperium is 30.
Terry Funk, 76.
Rabbit fever.
Terry,
Middle of the night.
I don't think that's till next week, man. Don't be jumping the gun.
No, it was just the other day. Terry Funk's birthday was just the other day.
But I probably said that last week on the birthdays.
Maybe. I
Hey,
don't know.
anyway,
I don't
for,
listen.
the music's on, man. I know you can't hear it. For F&B Eatery, for Jason Cornelius Bell, for Murray the Murray Man Murray, for Lucha Chris, for Two Beers Zach Pullman. Everybody support your local weed dealers, support your local restaurants. Black Lives Matter. I am Bill Vagan. Everybody boo the heels. Boo!